Welcome to The Launch, the podcast sponsored by Tandem Launch, Canada's premier incubator. We'll talk about tech, startups, entrepreneurship, fundraising, and everything in between. If you have a research background in tech and always wanted to build your own startup, then check out our website, tandemlaunch.com, to see what we're all about. Now on with the show. Hey, great. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Launch podcast sponsored by Tandem Launch. I'm your host, Bobbi Bidochka, and we are very lucky to have three incredible guests on this special edition podcast for International Women's Day. So welcome to Robin Selden, Wendy Wallbridge, and Mary Anderson.
Great to be here.
Because you all know each other, I thought it might be fun, instead of doing the normal thing where people introduce themselves, as guests normally do, that you would introduce each other so that we wouldn't just have like a CV read through, as impressive as they are. So let's start first. So Robin, please introduce Mary and your connection with her.
Okay, well, later on in my career, I was an SVP at a tech company in Silicon Valley. And as in most Silicon Valley companies, it was very male dominated in the executive levels and at pretty much every level, because I was in charge of marketing, and that included product marketing and product design and product strategy. And on my team of several men, I also had an incredible, smart, competent woman, Mary Anderson. And Mary worked for me at Dolby, the tech company, and was doing an amazing job. She was had so much potential. And I really wanted to make sure that she got the recognition that she deserved inside the company. It was very difficult to achieve. So, throughout my career, I have had coaches in the past that have helped me mainly with my more what I would say artificial elements of being a better executive. Well, I met Wendy when I was at a event with some colleagues, and when I met her face to face, we just connected. And it was something very different. And I could tell that Wendy was the type of coach that wanted to know and help you improve your whole self, not just being a professional woman executive, but your entire self. And she helped me do that. So while I was at Dolby, I engaged with her, and she just helped me figure out what I wanted to be in the world and find my voice, and it was incredible. And so I, after working with her, I asked if she would also work with Mary, because I could see that Mary could also benefit from Wendy.
Amazing. Okay, so now let's have Mary return the favor and speak about Robin.
Oh, definitely. So Robin was my first and only female boss in my tech career, and continues to be the first and only. I think she'll have that special place in my heart for the rest of my life, unless we change things dramatically. Robin was a person, so I had joined Dolby out of a semiconductor career. Dolby was a great company, and they had a different take on technology, and it was really fun because I was running a really large program. So it was a really nice advancement for me. But I walked into a situation where I was definitely the underdog in the sense that there wasn't a lot of people that looked like me at all. There was very few people that came from my background, which was highly technical and primarily from the PC world. And it was a struggle. It was a real struggle. And in walked one day a breath of amazing fresh air, Robin Selden. And not only was this woman ridiculously accomplished at very large brands, very big tech companies in the Silicon Valley, but she had a quiet calmness that I think everybody immediately gravitated to. We're like, okay, she definitely understands what she's doing. And that was a really special moment for me, that she was taking over the organization and that she was at this executive level that no woman had really been at Dolby. So she was really the only woman at that level. And for the first time in my career, I actually could see myself possibly being at that level, and that's kind of an interesting perspective. So it was really exciting to be working for Robin. Although I realized, and she, talk about a great relationship, just very honest and frank. And I always knew where I stood with her. And yeah, the rest of the story will unfold, I think, through this podcast.
And then tell us a bit about how Wendy came into your life.
Well, Wendy, I would call my second angel. Probably have my two angels in the room here. So thankfully, Robin had the ability to kind of see what my talents were, but also see some of the things I was doing to myself to undermine myself at the executive level. And she introduced me to Wendy, and it was an amazing time in my life. It was a time of complete change. I had just gone through a divorce. I had moved across the country. I was back in San Francisco. I had taken on a new organization. And so Wendy was a person that was introduced to me first and foremost as an executive coach, as the opportunity to kind of up-level myself. But I think Wendy and I became really fast friends when we were sitting together and laughing over very funny things, crying a lot during sessions. And I got the pleasure of not only having her as an executive coach, but I also had the pleasure of participating in her Spiral Up network and her Spiral Up classes, where I got to meet other phenomenal women in the Bay Area. Wendy and I worked together on some of the hardest stuff I think I've ever done in my life. And so angel number 2.
Wow, I'm really feeling the love here, ladies, feeling the love. So, Wendy, why don't you talk about how Robin and Mary came into your life?
Great. Well, first of all, thank you for both of you for saying those wonderful things. I think I'll be the glue that brings that together, sort of, because I had the perspective of being invited by Robin. First, let me say a little bit about Robin. When you describe Robin as having, I don't know what the words were you said, but she's got quiet power. Mm-hmm. And you rarely see quiet power in the higher realms, because it's a feminine power and it's not ego based. So it's very attractive, and very rare. And she just has that. And she's very much not about her. She's very much about how to forward the mission, the people, leaving a difference, making a difference. So, and matter of fact about it, really matter of fact, but powerful. And then, the backstory to how I got introduced to Mary was that Robin said, I have this spark of a person on my team, but she's shooting herself in the foot because she's being snarky in meetings, and she's not pulling for the team because there's something going on with her. I'm not sure what it is, but could you sit with her, meet with her, and see if you can smooth her out, kind of, because she's so amazing. She's got so much potential, so much spark. And then, meeting with Mary after, like she's saying, we really got to know each other. We were kindred spirits, and we unfolded. What's the right word for that? We sort of unwound. Yeah, we unwound the thing that was causing her to kind of work against herself in terms of her ability to rise in the organization. And in the process of that, she became more whole and more committed to what she cared about, what she wants to be. And today she's an amazing entrepreneur. So go figure.
Go figure. Yes. Beautiful. So it should be very clear to our audience now that you 3 powerful women are involved in tech one way or the other. We also know that there's not enough women in tech, especially at the leadership levels. So there's a number of obstacles that prevent women from entering the field and staying in the industry. So maybe to start, maybe we have to, I guess, begin from the inside, like you were alluding to, unpacking that personal stuff, dealing with our traits and who we want to be in this world. So Robin, do you want to maybe get us going, and let's have a deeper conversation about that?
Yes, I think that there are an amazing number of powerful women out there at all levels. And, you know, as a leader, as a manager of those people, I always try to get the most out of them, because you're nothing without an amazing team. You're nothing. You can't accomplish a thing. And so when I think about how to be a powerful leader, I think about a diverse team, a team that can bring a lot of different elements to the party. And I've had challenges getting those people. I've had challenges finding women who are in a role when I join a company. There's not that many women in the roles, and I try to hire them, or I try to promote them when I do have it, because because they're so rare to have at your disposal to work with. When you do have them and they're great and they're sharp and they're competent, you want to invest in them and make them rise in the organization, because it's an opportunity that doesn't come around every day. And you need male allies to help you do that. I had a challenge when I first started. I was a woman in a tech company, and this is back in the late 80s. So this was quite a while ago, but things haven't changed that much actually since the late 80s. And I wanted to be a product manager. You know, that's what Mary was when I first met. She was managing an entire product team. And I wanted to do that early in my career, right out of grad school. And they wouldn't, I was not an engineer, but I could certainly understand the technology enough to be a product manager. And they weren't going to allow me to do it. And, it was definitely because I was a woman, and because they didn't think I had the technology chops. So when you ask what you have to do when you're at a disadvantage and you're not given the benefit of the doubt, I went to my VP of marketing and asked him to make me a product manager and to give me a test. Tell me what I have to do to show you I can do this job. And he said, okay, I'll give you 2 weeks. I want you to study this, come back, pitch this as if you were talking to a client. So I did that. I went and I studied. I got allies from the apps engineers, from everyone, studied up. And I went back and I pitched, and he said, Robin, I was wrong. You can do this job. And so I became a product manager at this tech company. But I had to fight for it. They were not giving me that job. And then that put me in the right career path to become a general manager eventually. But if I hadn't done that, I would have taken a different route, which many women have to take, that don't get into those mainstream routes where you can be more, be a bigger player in the company. And so, I guess my point is that it's even starting, as a 20-something in your career, you have to fight for what you want and show your voice, because you're going to be at a disadvantage. It's the reality of the situation right now.
Yeah. And then, so Mary, do you have any, examples from your career pathway where there was just certain things that you had to do to get there, to stay there, or even things that you witnessed?
Yeah, I mean, Robin hit on a lot of interesting topics there. I think there's a combination of multiple things. I think I did go to engineering school, but when my first semiconductor company I went to, I was always deemed not technical enough. I don't know why, but so that became a big chip on my shoulder, and I was constantly fighting to show how technical and analytical I was, and that'll come out later more in this conversation too, and how it actually hindered me. So I think at some level, there's multiple blocks along the path for women getting to that C-suite. There's that early block, which is essentially school to that first job. And I talked to my niece who is works at a very major tech company right now. And she comes from a liberal arts education. And she's like, well, I really want this job, but I can't do it. Very similar to what Robin's talking about. And I'm like, yes, you can. Of course you can. Can you learn quickly? Can you make decisions? Can you manage a team, run a team? Do you understand the value proposition of your product? Okay, then you've got it, right? That's it. So there's that level of coaching and support I think young women need to have, to understand that it doesn't matter. We really like to put people in boxes out of college. That's great. I really think it's limiting. In fact, some of my best product managers, business unit managers have always been people that come from a little bit different backgrounds, because they are more open-minded to things, my personal experience. And then I think that the next kind of big hard rung, frankly, for me was why these two ladies are so important to me, was moving from this level where I was a business, like managing a business of significant size, to being seen as an executive. Because you may not look like the other executives, or because you're younger, or anything else like that. And I think, if I think about the critical paths for me and success, it was really that believing I could do it early on, no matter what, and then making that kind of big jump from being an individual contributor and a manager to a true leader. And that's where I think, as women, we can do more for each other to get us through those major transition points. And there's multiple transition points, but for me, those were the big kind of hurdles I had to transition through.
Because I think maybe some women might think, have a bit of a chip on their shoulder, like I shouldn't have to go through this, especially in this day and age. I should just I should get the promotion because then they should know. So how do we help those women through that sort of mindset?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to point out that Mary maybe realize is that when you talk about women supporting women, it doesn't have to be women who are your peers or women who are above you. It could be women who are below you. Mm-hmm. So women who work for you or who are in another organization, you may be in the middle of the company and you want to get to the executive level. Well, you know what? There's a pool of amazing women that might be, deemed below you from a level standpoint, but they're there to make you rise too. You don't just think of your mentor as being some senior executive somewhere that happens to be a woman that can help you out. No, people help people. All women help women at every level in every direction, and it's just amazing. And I've been. In marketing, there tends to be more women in marketing than in some of the other functions. So I've been very fortunate to have some amazing women work for me that I can help, but they've helped me. They make me look good because they're so amazing. And that's just really important that, the women out there listening to this podcast that have a team, when they make women look amazing, they make themselves look amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. Wendy, from your point of view?
Well, I think of that quote, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Mm-hmm. And it really is the times that we're living in now and the socialization that has caused women to be far behind men in terms of rising into leadership requires that we are a collective force together and that we have each other's backs. And these two are a perfect example of how we do that. And one of the things I think Robin pointed out that's so important to notice is that early jump to manager, the early jump from individual contributor to manager is what they call the broken rung. And it's a well-known fact that if you can get over that rung, you have a better shot going forward, but that's what really has siphoned off the talent from getting into leadership for women. But so that was a sidebar. And there's so many things that you made me think of when you were talking, but did you have a question for me?
Well, I mean, maybe just, back to the different types of obstacles that women are going to face. And we don't have time to go through all of them. But I think from your perspective, there's a mindset. There's getting your perspective in check is maybe the first place to start.
Yeah. I mean, there's an inside out dynamic to all of this in that what goes on with you in your consciousness that's buried, especially what's buried, is going to it's going to telegraph out picture into some kind of reality. So in Mary's case, when we dug deep into her psychology around what was her part in it, she found that there were some old beliefs that she wasn't enough, and that she had that thing she said about not being good at technically. I hear that so often from women. There's always this one more certificate that you think you need to get, or this next level of education or whatever. It's really got to be addressed inside, because we've internalized this message that we need more, we need something else that will just make us enough. And I don't want to discount. So there's an internal process that is important for everybody to go through, to really struggle with those two parts of ourselves, or those two voices. And there may be more than two, there could be 10, but of the ways that we tell ourselves that we're not enough, to tell ourselves that we are. A good example for me was, but before I tell that story, let me just say, I just wanted to balance that out with saying that besides the inner work that women need to do, it is not our problem. It is a cultural problem that we are in the midst of confronting in terms of gender equality and gender equity. And there's some very stodgy old, ways the patriarchy has built systems and what's normal in a company that isn't fair. And we're all working on ways to lift each other up, but also not just women, but anybody that has been not included, that has been pushed aside and been, somehow not favored. But the thing I was thinking about, just from my own story, was I remember early on in my career in coaching, and it's been 3 decades of work. I remember having a really favorite client who was very important. She used to fly around in the jet of the CEO, and she was really she had a lot of importance and was cool. And I really loved her, and I wanted to be the favorite coach, And I remember falling out with her somehow, and the end of our contract came, and she didn't renew, and I was distraught. I was like, what did I do? What happened? Because I admired her, and she was a reflection of my success. If she liked me, then I must be really good. And when she didn't return my calls and such, it took me months to get over it. And I think what finally happened was I had to really look at, did I really do anything wrong? Was I anything but what I promised to be? And in that tussle with myself, I was able to reconcile and establish my own seat, if you will, about my own value. And I got over it. I just think it's a good example of the important work we each need to do for ourselves around confronting anything that's trying to hold us back internally, as well as fighting on the outside in whatever ways we can, or being a force for good in whatever ways we can, to let people that are less included in, to bring people into the conversation so that we're all there.
Wow. Thank you, Wendy, for sharing that story. Robin, did you want to add to that?
Well, I just wanted to say that, this idea of women supporting women, it's, what Wendy was saying was that it's kind of like we need to create. The reason I support that in almost everything I do, whether it's philanthropic or personal or professional, I'm very committed to helping women, and I believe it because I think it's the practical thing to do. I think there's a critical mass problem. There's not enough women. They somehow, and Wendy knows this from her teachings, is that that women fall out of the funnel, if you will, going through the career chain. And I want more women. As soon as we get to a critical mass, we'll have a tipping point where there'll be enough women, and it'll be expected for women to be in these roles. Mm-hmm. And it won't be second guessed, and it won't be overlooked, and women will not be invisible anymore as They're maneuvering through the workplace. And so I believe that the more that we do that for each other, the more we're all going to win. Like Mary said, it's not a zero-sum game. It's everybody wins when that happens.
I was just going to add to that exactly what she says. It's been shown in research that, it's called the amplifying effect. No, not amplifying, but it's when women get into leadership roles, everybody's lives get better. It's not just about women leading. Men don't lose something by sharing power. They actually gain something, because everything that men care about, their relationships, their family, their own health, improves when there are more women in leadership. I mean, let's face it, I think a lot of us don't realize that we're still really stuck. This revolution that women were having is stalled. Only 25% of women are at the C-suite level, and only 8.2 are CEOs still. And if on average, women still make 81 cents for every dollar, and the playing field is way more tilted for women of color. And also, based on this rate that we're supposedly evolving, women are expected to reach pay equity with men in 2059 at the rate we're going. So
I won't be around.
A little reality check there.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also statistics about even when women are in high-level C-suite positions, that they are still disproportionately, domestic duties at home and things like that. And so it's still, we've been stuck at this 80% for a good 20 years. So the pay equity issue, and even when there's equity, so some places have equity exercises where they take a look at all the salaries and they see what's going on, and then they realize that, women are behind, and then they equal them up. But then it's because they're not training women on how to negotiate and ask for raises. And so, but the men do that like just automatically. And then you get this disparity again. So since I brought up men, let's talk about traits, like masculine, feminine traits. So I know, Mary, that you were touching on that. But let's expand on that conversation on embracing, do we need to act like men in order to survive in this man's world?
Yeah, it's a great conversation. And I think that Wendy and I, we worked a lot on this. And this was a very interesting thing, because I would say that, I grew up a tomboy, always played a lot of sports, went into, semiconductors, I had a lot of masculine traits. I have a lot of masculine traits, but I was putting those on the forefront. I was putting all of my analytical, my strategic skills. Frankly, my combativeness came a lot from that, which is what, Robbins probably saw and was like, ooh, we need to soften these edges a little bit. And then all of my great feminine traits, which I have instinctually, my compassion, my empathy, my ability to listen and really understand and to connect, all of those things, I was kind of pushing down, almost embarrassed by. And I think this is something that I really learned with Wendy, and through her working. So, not only the coaching session, but helping and supporting her in her book, Spiral Up, it's about how do you bring your feminine, what we could traditionally call feminine traits, to the forefront of a leadership position. And it was when I, first of all, got the chip off my shoulder, realized I was good enough and all that kind of good stuff. But then I really brought some of those feminine traits, or what we consider feminine traits, to the forefront. That's actually, the trajectory of my career it just took off. Wow. I was able to collaborate, work in very intense situations, but bring large groups of people to the same conclusion. I was able to lead a very large team in a way where they felt valued, connected with, supported. I think, by the way, that's another thing that both Robin and Wendy are phenomenal at. And it was a way that I didn't lose my ability to look at a strategic plan or look at the P&L and say, this, and this is what we need to do next, or my decisiveness. But I was able to do it in a way where, back to Wendy's quote, we were able to go further because I brought everyone along, and it was more enjoyable. to me, by the way. It was more fulfilling because, you know, face it, we spend most of our life at work, and those connections are extremely important. I mean, we have our husbands, our partners, our children, our connections. But, you know, for me, a lot of my to this day, very strong connections are those connections I've made at work. So I'm a big believer in understanding that and having the openness and the forthright to bring both of those parts of yourself as a woman to the table, because I think that's when organizations can really, really succeed.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, you know, Wendy did the same thing for me, in that she allowed me to figure out how to be my true self, and not under, first of all, and have the confidence. And part of it was the male female traits that I possess that allow me to be successful in the right combination, but to not feel like I have to hold back and I'm not good enough, or I'm not capable of getting what I want out of the organization. She taught me to be myself, and it was so liberating. I have to say, when I went to the next position after, it was such a night and day, and mainly because of me, not because of the organization or the culture or anything. It was mainly because I was there. I knew my job. I was just going to, work with the other executives and make things happen and be myself. And it was amazing. And I enjoyed myself more. I got promoted. All these things start happening for you once you realize that you can have that balance and you can bring more things to the party for an organization by being yourself.
Yeah, that's great. I love that you tied that together, Robin, by saying about authenticity, because a lot of people think authenticity is just like saying whatever you think and like that. But really, authenticity is when you, yeah, put your filter on.
Yeah.
But being authentic is being unleashing yourself in a way that is being your values, being your standards and ideals. Not being, everybody has that part that it's like they're not their greatest self. That's not really their authentic self. The authentic self is the part that wants everyone to win, that wants to make the thing better, that wants to show up as a good friend to other people. And the thing about the masculine and feminine, people, especially the younger generation coming through the ranks now, I know that they have a little resistance to talking about them, because it's like, don't put a label on it. There's gender fluidity and everything that you want to include. I think the point is to remember that, first of all, we got where we are in the development of technology and all of the structures and amazing cities and buildings that we've created and man on the moon because of the masculine energy, effort, strategy, getting stuff done, moving it fast. All of that it's been wonderful, but we're in a cultural shift right now where what's needed to balance everything else is also to let the feminine rise. And if you ask a man or a woman at the end of their life what mattered to them, they're not going to say that I became an SVP or whatever. They're not going to say that. They're going to say my relationships. And to be good at relationships, you have to be connected to yourself and connected to others. And that requires a whole different set of skills than what we have been rewarding as people are being developed in companies and into leadership. We've forgotten that is the essence of what makes everything happen. Everything good in our lives has come out of relationships and our ability to connect with one another, to collaborate, to listen, to take turns in a conversation, credit distribution, all the feminine leadership strengths that are now prized. And that's not just for women, that's for men too. As Mary mentioned in the earlier conversation about John Gersima's book, The Athena Doctrine. I think the subtitle is When Women and Men Who Think Like Them Will Rule the Future. Well, I don't think it's so much we want to rule the future, but his study of, across the world, asking people what they want most in a leader, surfaced the data that people really want genuine, sincere, connecting human beings. We see a lot of not that in leadership today, let's face it, but sometimes it has to get dark before it gets brighter.
Mhm.
Add to that really quickly that, one thing Wendy mentioned about being our authentic self, that, I'm in marketing, right? So I know how to build a brand, and being a brand is being a distinctive personality, being a distinctive set of attributes. And because women suffer, and a lot of different underserved communities suffer from this, not just women, but women suffer from being invisible. And, they walk into a boardroom full of men and women are invisible. It happens to me. It happens to me all the time. You sit at a table, you're interrupted, you're not seen, so you're invisible. And in order for you to not be invisible, you need to brand yourself. But you brand yourself by being your authentic self.
Mhm.
You learn who you are. You learn what you're great at. You learn what skills you have on all sides of the spectrum. And you create that persona that people notice when you walk in the room. And people notice when they're, putting people up for promotion or giving out stock options or doing whatever. And that's what you have to do. But it's the good news is that it happens naturally once you figure out exactly what you want to be in the world, which is what Wendy taught me how to do.
Thank you. As you say that, I think of the people that have a quieter style and have even culturally maybe have a less of a dynamic brand, but they are authentic. And it's an issue when marginalized cultures and are in situations where they're being ignored. And by the way, when you study the research on the 3 biggest complaints that women have, it's that they feel excluded, dismissed, and that they have to constantly prove themselves. Mm-hmm. And so that's not just in case you're listening to this and you feel any one of those, it's not personal. This is really happening in the culture. And yes, I completely underline what Robin's saying about how once we come to terms with the value that we bring and the essence that we are, and we become uncompromised about unleashing that, it takes a risk to do that. It takes a risk that, maybe people won't like me, or maybe I'll say the wrong thing, but it's better to say the wrong thing than not to talk. And also, if you are happy, if you get yourself happy, taking care of you and your needs and your well-being and your mental health, and then you will shine. And I mean, it's a whole other conversation on how to do that remotely, because we're all on Zoom now or in some kind of WebEx thing. And that's a whole nother thing. First of all, we have to look at ourselves, which is horrible if we have to keep looking at ourselves. Second of all, other people are looking at us, and we have to constantly have this attention. So it's a lot of stress on women, and especially if we already are overly noticing and caring about our appearance. But we're making progress. We're making progress. I agree completely with what Robin said, but I didn't want to leave out people who feel like they can't be bouncy and shiny. They still can be authentic, and they still can get where they want to go in a company.
Yeah. I didn't mean for them to be, like you have to command a room when every time you walk in. I meant you learn what you are, and you do that to the nines, and then you win.
Well, you're a good example of that. I mean, yeah, perfect example.
So I know that, I've had a few conversations with men on these topics as well. And I'd say for the younger generations coming up, they also feel like this pressure of, well, if I don't want to be that masculine thing that, I know isn't good, but no one's teaching me what else, how do I replace those behaviors, or how do I, who can I be? What's the new playbook? So I know, Wendy, you have an inclusive leadership program that you've basically encoded in top tech companies, but can you speak to that? And then maybe let's then jump over to Mary for have you had any experiences where you've noticed, that male allies that you have are, really trying to do the right thing or do the right behaviors?
Mhm.
Yeah, well, thank you for plugging my program. My program is called Full Spectrum Leadership, and there's a women's leadership Spiral Up program, and there's a companion program that's a men's inclusive leadership, men as allies, and we've done it with the top global tech companies in the world. And the purpose of it is to help men not so much learn things as unlearn them, and it's really hard for guys right now in that, like you said, the old macho paradigm, that's dead. And they're also in trouble for acting like that. And I'm sure a lot of guys feel like they might be in the crosshairs, or that they might have done something wrong already and someone's going to remember. I mean, there's a lot of confusion and uncertainty that goes on for guys. And the bad part of that is that it causes men to pull back and withdraw from mentoring women and supporting women and having private conversations or business dinners with women. When what we need now is for them to step forward and to really support us. But giving them the actual, here's what you do is part of it. But a lot of it is just really basic, like learning how to listen better, how to include more, how to not be attached to this old model of what leadership is supposed to look like. Full spectrum means that there's a mosaic of voices that we need to include in leadership now that are going to create buy-in from the people who they're delivering it to. We want our leadership to look like the customers that we have, and they're very diverse. So it's really about helping men, helping them in a blame-free environment to learn how to deal with some of these gender sticky situations, how to work them out so that they're fair, and how to bring more gender equity into a situation, into their companies and into their lives. And yeah, there's a lot to that, from learning emotional intelligence better to practices that help them be male allies.
I think just to kind of continue and add to that, I mean, through my career, I've had amazing male allies. In fact, I would just say more often than not, I've had great teammates, leaders, partners across the organization that were all men. As Rob and I have experienced, it's primarily men in our careers. And I would say that I would call out some of the traits about those allies and Wendy spoke about this a little bit. That's kind of an interesting one. It's this level of inclusion. And I would say that my best allies, whether they were leaders, subordinates, peers, were people that weren't afraid to challenge my thinking or where I was coming from, but they did it in a way that it was a partnership. And it was like, how do we find a better solution? And then by the way, how do we not divide and conquer, but how do we find our collective talents and attack this challenge or issue or problem in a way where we can really get something across the board in an effective way? And this concept of inclusion and being at the table, I think that's such a funny, it's not a funny, it's such a real thing for me. And I like harken back to, being 10 years old on the basketball court, wanting to play with the boys or whoever was on the basketball court. And I was not going to not play because somebody told me I was a girl. So it's the same thing, right? It's like, we're all here to win or play and succeed and support each other. And how do our men allies hear us, understand, but treat us as a true partner? And I think I've been very lucky that I've had tons of people like that in my life, and thankfully more great allies than not than enemies.
I would agree. I've been fortunate too, and I've had great bosses that were very trusting and respectful, and supporting me and advancing me in organizations. So I've been extremely fortunate. And what I try to do, I'll tell one little story is, for example, when I left my last company, I had some women that were advancing. I had just promoted one to a vice president of communications. I had another one that was in charge of the website, and I wanted to make sure that they were taken care of and still had visibility in the organization even after I left. And so I sought out other male executives, because that's all there were besides me, to be their mentors, and they recognized their talent. They recognized they were stars, and so I was able to kind of pair them up, if you will, so that they could continue to get visibility at the C-suite level with the work that they're doing and the support and the advice, so that they could continue to do well. But I had to do that before I left, otherwise they might somehow get lost in the shuffle, and I didn't want that to happen.
I just have to say that is such a testament to Robin's whole career. You know, she's always looking out for who she can help in the organization, and you know, when things change, making sure that everybody lands somewhere. I love that. And the 3 explicit strategies that male allies can do for women are the same that we can take on ourselves or seek out, which is in talent reviews, make sure someone's sponsoring you, which is like, or try to get someone to sponsor you, which means they'll speak up for you when you're not in the room, and they'll bring your name up for you. Finding someone who will do that, who, like Robin, is a key to your advancement. The second one is mentorship, because it's sponsorship or mentorship. And then also stretch assignments, taking on something that will help you grow and that is visible and that someone is assigning you, sort of, so that you can, I mean, you can volunteer, but so that people can track the splash that you make, so to speak.
Beautiful. Okay. So let's go around the Zoom table and share one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self.
I guess I'll start, and I would say, know what you want and ask for it, and don't be afraid to ask for it. I think I was too quiet or not sure of myself early on in my career to know to know that I could do that. You know, I instinctively and intellectually knew what needed to be done, whether it was in an organization or a product line or whatever. And I often just didn't have a voice that stood up and said what I wanted. And I think just voicing your opinion, having a point of view, have a point of view and state it. And that will help you get what you want. And I wish I had realized that and internalized that earlier in my career.
Amazing.
I think I'll just add to that. I think Robin touched on such a great point. It's probably 2 things I would say is don't try to be like everybody else in the room. That's not why you're there. Embrace your feminine traits and your masculine traits. Bring them together to kind of build the most powerful you. And then I'm going to say this one too, because Wendy kind of spoke to it, but it was one that I learned a little bit later in my career. And I was like, whoa, that was a little mind blowing. There's a difference between a coach, like a person in your corner, like Wendy, who you can bare your soul to and, you know, talk about it all. A mentor, which is usually in your organization or maybe outside of your organization or in even another company, but it's really work focused about execution strategy, like how to be a better employee ultimately in your particular role. And then what Wendy said that I never really did until I had these conversations with her, which is identify sponsors. And that, and to follow on to Robin's point, talk to those sponsors, have multiple. They need to sit at the right tables and have take the time to have the conversation with those people articulate have your 2-minute elevator pitch at any given moment, what you're really good at, what you want to accomplish, and these stretch assignments like that's really important. And you've got to have these conversations, because when they're at the table and you've articulated these wants and these needs and these things that you're passionate about, those people will speak up for you. And you may not be there to hear it, but you'll see that it comes to you in tenfold, frankly. It's a really important coach, mentor, sponsor, all different.
Right. You want me to add something? Okay. Well, I would just say, I would tell my younger self to stop worrying. Don't worry so much. Because one of the things, the reason I wrote the book Spiral Up, or the message behind Spiraling Upward, it's called, is that whatever happens to you is for you. It's not happening to you. It's happening for you. And it's working on you to bring you up to this next level. If you take on whatever it is, it could be a mean neighbor. It could be a terrible boss. It could be getting fired from a job, or even getting a diagnosis like what happened to me. It's all there for you to continue to step into the next level of who you are. And you don't have to worry. It's all for you.
Beautiful. Wendy, do you have a copy of your book that you could just flash on the screen?
Mary does.
Oh, Mary does.
Oh, it's backwards though.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
It's not.
No, it's not.
It's on mine.
Okay. Beautiful. And it's available on Amazon?
Yes.
Love
Of course.
it. Okay. So then you have the ear of our audience. What would you like our audience to know or support? If you want someone to get in touch with you, for what purpose? Let's start with Mary.
Yeah, I'm very excited to be part of the Tandem Launch team. I think that the organization is very good. I love supporting entrepreneurs. It's been a passion project for me, specifically, well, any entrepreneur, but I have done a lot of work with women entrepreneurs, and I have personally benefited from coaching and mentorship. So I definitely feel like it's a mantle for me to give that back. So I would say that's one, and I'm living in Maui now, which is a little wild, but I would also encourage everyone that's watching this podcast and that's kind of passionate about this particular topic and entrepreneurship. Don't be afraid to create these networking conversations in your own circle. I was very fortunate because I was in Silicon Valley and I was magically paired with two amazing women, and I think that level of networking and support came from the fact that there is actually a fairly large networking community there. But as I'm experiencing here in Maui, we don't have that. So I'm working on creating that. So I task every woman or every person, frankly, to take that on, and how do you support each other in this kind of spiraling up world.
Robin.
Okay, I'll go next. So I'm currently the CMO of Piece by Piece International. So it's Piece by Piece, like puzzle piece, International. And it's an amazing organization founded by a woman, woman-owned, and it is doing such good work in the world, supporting women, supporting underserved communities, helping them get jobs. And what it does is there's tons of small businesses around the world that create incredible high quality products, but only employ people who have a hard time getting employed. It could be women who were formerly incarcerated. They could be people who were victims of human trafficking. There could be a number of things that bring these people down. And when they want to turn their lives around, fortunately, there are small businesses around the world, in the United States and around the world, that lift them up and give them a job and give them training and give them a chance so that they can feed their family, feed their children, and turn their lives around. So we like to say our job is to change lives. And so what we do at Piece by Piece International is buy these products, and we curate a beautiful, high quality set of products that we could present as corporate gifts. And then we sell them to the Googles and the Apples and the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative and all of these wonderful corporations out there that want to live their values. So they buy products that help people get these jobs or create a more sustainable world or empower women. And I'm just so proud of Lori Jones Pastroni, who is the CEO, who I work for now, is making this happen, and she's made it happen out of nothing. And so I'm proud to be a part of it. And it's pbpinternational.com is the website where they do the corporate gifting for good.
Will you be putting her links in the show notes so that people can? Oh, that's great.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I don't really have something to plug. I mean,
oh yeah, welcome.
So I'll plug it for you. It's
I
a
will.
wonderful book, and it really, I think it really does show the power of momentum. That once you get it, you know, the title kind of tells it all. Is that you tend to spiral up because you've got the right foundation and the right mindset, and then the sky's the limit.
And if companies want to hire you for your training program?
Yes. I mean, if you want to have more gender equity and lift your women up and turn your men into male allies, I'd love to hear from you. I do want to say something in closing, which is really an amazing thing. When we think about how, you know, when you think about the evolution trajectory of human beings and species, our society, how it's actually really, really evolved. I mean, 40,000 years ago, there were Neanderthals. There was a time when people sat in a coliseum and would watch human beings get torn apart by lions for entertainment. You know, we used to have slavery. There's a long way to go. We still have a long way to go, but we are evolving. And every one of us, every single one of us is the tip of the culture, the tip of the creative impulse, the evolutionary impulse that wants to bring our society and people to the next level. And so we're really going somewhere. And it's not like something we just have to give ourselves over to it. And I would say no matter what level you are or what you're doing, you know, in life, you're very important. Your special gifts are very important. Your essence is extremely needed right now. We're in an incredibly scary time for our society, and we need all hands on decks in whatever way you bring, you know, your honesty and truth and gifts to the party. You're invited and you're needed.
Beautiful, Wendy. Thank you so much. So for International Women's Day, they're asking folks to sort of hold up their arms in this to cut the inequity. Yay. Okay. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for this special podcast. And thank you to our loyal listeners. Your time is always appreciated. You can follow us on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you again. Why wonderful, wonderful guests.
Thank you, Bobbi. This is great.
Thank you.
And don't forget, if you have a technical background and you want to create your own startup, hit me up on LinkedIn and I can tell you about all the incredible opportunities with Tandem Launch. Ciao for now. Thank you for listening. We hope you had fun and gained valuable insights. If you like what you see and hear, hit the subscribe button, leave us a comment, share the podcast, and follow us on social media.